Subscribe and click the bell icon for the latest updates and notifications from the Indian Express.
What if I were to ask you to name a car maker that is not working on an electric car today? Well, the answer would be tough, right? Well, that is because almost every car maker in the world is working on some sort of an electric or an hybrid car. And the good part about this is the fact that electric cars are still in a development phase. Now this means that every car manufacturer is coming up with a car that explains or expresses what an ideal electric car should be like or could be like. And that brings us to the car we have with us today. That is the BMW i3s. Now this car is BMW's idea of what an ideal, small, practical electric car should be. But how does it perform? And whether it makes sense for a country like India or not, that's what we are going to find out on the show today. Now if we start off with the design, well, the design of this car is really quirky. That's the first thing that would come to the mind of many when you see the i3s. Now this has got a mild makeover compared to the older i3, which gives it a little more dynamic appearance, but overall the i3s still comes across as a very quirky car, but nonetheless it is a massively attention-grabbing car, of course, because there's nothing like it on the road today. Now, before we go into the specifics of this car, I must tell you that this car is not on sale in India and BMW has no plans of bringing this to India anytime soon. The idea is to see whether an electric car like the i3s makes sense for a market like India or not. Now, let's start off with the key design features of the BMW i3s. Well, first of all, at the front you've got the signature kidney grille. Well, that's something you'll see on every single BMW on sale today. And of course, you've got these blue inserts at the front. Now, blue is a color that a lot of electric and hybrid cars use to signify they are environmentally friendly. Now, moving to the side, what would attract your attention are these massive 20-inch alloy wheels. These look good and give the i3s a very sporty and dynamic stance. The door again is a fairly large one, but the highlight here is that when you want to open the rear door, that is a suicide door and that looks really, really cool. If you move towards the rear further, you can see the window, the glass area just tapers and moves into a sleek design. And moving further back to the rear, you've got these smart looking, sleek and futuristic LED tail lamps. Now, apart from that, the rest of the tailgate is black, looks good, but the only slight problem here is that from the rear, the i3s looks a bit narrow. Now, once you enter the cabin of the BMW i3s, one of the first things a lot of you will notice is the usage of carbon fiber that you can see around here. Now, the key structure and a lot of body panels in this car are made out entirely from carbon fiber. And what this does is that it reduces weight, thereby increases the performance of this car and most crucially, the range from the battery. Now, the rest of the cabin of the i3s is a very interesting place to be in, especially if you consider the wide range of materials used. Everything starting from wood, leather, plastic, fabric, leather, all of it is there in the cabin, and this goes very well in sync with the environmental friendly nature of electric cars. Now, the dashboard especially has a very interesting and a unique design, and of course in terms of instrumentation, what you get is an infotainment screen here. It's the usual kind of a screen that you would find on most BMWs, so it's a color infotainment screen, no touch response, It again has an iDrive system which you can operate through these rotary controls here. In terms of instrument cluster, again you get a small rectangular screen which gives you critical information readouts such as your speed and your charging and battery usage status. Now, apart from that, of course, it is a spacious car. It is a very interesting car to be in. It gives you a very different and a very nice upmarket feel. Even the rear seats offer a lot of space. I'm sure when you had a look at the suicide doors and the kind of space they offer in terms of entrance, it might give a person an impression there is not enough space, but believe me, there is enough space at the rear for two adults to be seated for a short while. That wouldn't be a problem at all. Being an electric car, there are a few things that you miss out on. So despite the fact that this is a BMW, you do not get power reclining seats. So you have to do that manually because having all those motor would add weight and sap more on the battery. Alright, so now let's talk about the most important and the most interesting part about this car, how it drives. Now, being an electric car, this comes with a lithium-ion battery and an electric motor. In terms of power, what you get from the motor is about a peak power of 184 horsepower and 270 Newton meters of torque. Now, the battery is about 350 volts plus, so it is a fairly powerful battery. Now, while in terms of performance these numbers seem quite adequate, and in the real world they actually are, the car feels really quick, what is most important is how much is the range in this car. That is the most crucial question for any electric car in the world, because the biggest problem with electric cars is the range anxiety. So what you get with the i3s is a range of about 200 kilometers on a full charge, and of course you can charge it in about 11 to 12 hours on a normal charging socket. So in terms of convenience, well, yes, the range is quite nice. You can use it on an everyday basis. You can use it for fairly long rides as well, within the city or somewhere slightly outside the city. So it's got enough juice to take care of that kind of a distance. Now, most of you might already be aware that electric cars are pretty much silent. So this one too is silent, and that's a bit eerie and a little bit boring too. But then again, it's the future. There's nothing much we can do. So in terms of acceleration, yes, being an electric motor, you've got all the torque available right from the word go, from 0 RPM. The moment you put your foot on the throttle, you've got all of it, and as a result of that, the car accelerates in a very impressive manner. What you get is very good acceleration till about 80-90 kilometers of speed. So that is a burst of acceleration you get there, but from there on, it just fizzes out. So that is my real problem with the performance, and it's not about this car. It is about all electric cars. You get a lot of performance from the word go because you've got all the torque available. But as you move up, you tend to lose performance, and that is quite contrary to what happens in petrol cars, where you start off with a good performance and then as you rev high, you build on performance. But again, in terms of performance, this is a properly quick car. In our test run, it has done the 0 to 100 kilometers run in about 7.2 seconds, which is a tad slow from BMW standards, but being an electric car, it is quite impressive, I would say. Again, in terms of handling, well, it is a capable handling car, but it is around really fast corners that you can feel the limitations of the slim tires. And apart from that, if I talk about ride quality, it's a BMW, it's a bit more inclined towards performance and driving dynamics. So it's slightly on the stiffer side, but that said, it is not something that will make you feel uncomfortable even over bad surfaces. So even if you're going over uneven roads and crossing potholes, and especially if you are in comfort mode, because you do get driving modes here. So if you're in the comfort mode, there's not much of an issue you'll have. Put it in sport mode, you get a better throttle response, the car feels more tight, but the range also goes down. So your battery depletes faster. So if you're just moving around in city, the best mode to be in is Eco Pro, because that is when you get the maximum battery saving, but the only downside to it is that the air conditioning then runs in a very limited manner. Now, one interesting thing about driving the i3s is the way it regenerates or recuperates battery. I mean, so each time you decelerate or you brake, all of that kinetic energy is converted into electrical energy and stored back in the battery, and that helps you extend the range. Now, what is different in the i3s is the fact that the moment you start decelerating, the force of deceleration is quite strong. It is so strong that in fact about 70 to 75% of the times you don't really even need to hit the brakes. So if you're approaching a red light, all you need to do is just a few, maybe 100 meters before, even from speeds like about 60, you can just leave the throttle and the car will almost come to a stop in time without using brakes at all. A few other interesting technologies in the cabin include a collision prevention and detection program, and you also have something called a traffic jam assist. So these are quite futuristic and advanced technologies, but these are not particularly useful when you consider them in the Indian scenario. The other safety bits include the usual stuff that you would expect from any BMW car. So you've got airbags all around, you've got ABS, EVD, you've got traction control. So all of that is there. It's a BMW, so yes, it is a safe car, and the fact that it has a carbon fiber shell makes it even safer than conventional cars. So now that we have discussed all of the performance bits about this car and have ascertained that this is technologically quite an advanced and a good car, the big question, would I buy one? Well, so leaving cost aside, yes, a car with this kind of performance, maybe a little less features, is good enough to be your second or third car. But as a primary car, it still has issues because you still need about 12 hours of charging. That said, there is a variant in the i3s range which comes with a petrol range extender too. So that might make more sense for a market such as India, but you also need to consider the fact that that will be even more expensive. Now, as I told you earlier, the i3s is not on sale in India and will not be anytime soon. Well, that simply means I cannot tell you how much this car costs in India. But if BMW were to import this car and sell it, I'm sure it would cost upwards of rupees 50 lakh. And at that price, I don't need to tell you, it would make very little commercial sense. Now, the real idea behind this car, however, the reason why we are driving it is to understand how smart integration of various things can lead to a lot of development for electric cars in the near future. And that is what the i3s shows us. It shows how smart usage of materials such as carbon fiber can reduce weight of the car drastically. It also shows how smart integration of electronics along with the motor and the battery can give you a good range. And smart usage of materials inside the cabin can give you good comfort. They can give you a heightened sense of comfort and sophistication, and at the same time lower weight as well. But all these things put together, the car is not meant for India, because this car is simply quite ahead of its time for this country, and in simple words, India is still not ready for this car.